The Epstein Class has started another imperial war of aggression against Iran. I know because the country I grew up in is being destroyed. Tehran. Smoke has covered the sun, the streets are on fire, and the acid rain falling across the city is the chemical runoff from Israel's bombing of oil refineries on the northern and southern outskirts of Tehran. This is not a targeted strike. This is not a short, limited operation. The United States and Israel are waging a full-scale war of annihilation against a nation of 90 million people, deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure, schools, and hospitals. The same playbook used in Israel's genocide in Gaza, but now scaled up. In this video, we're going to see exactly what this war is about, who it actually serves, and why I'm calling it the Epstein War. Now, Iran's government has not folded or collapsed, and that has genuinely shocked Washington and Tel Aviv. In response to the U.S.-Israeli campaign, Iranian forces have struck American military bases and radar installations across Gulf Arab states throughout the region. Sustained missile barrages have devastated Tel Aviv. Iran has also activated proxy networks and intelligence assets across the Middle East in ways that have stretched U.S. and Israeli operational capacity. And then Iran did something that no nation has done in a generation. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. The strait is the single most important energy choke point on the planet. Roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through that narrow passage every day. Closing it has sent energy markets into freefall, threatened to tip multiple economies into recession, and handed Iran a bargaining chip of historic proportions. The US and Israel are not backing down. They are fully committed to the destruction of Iran as a functioning state, not just a change of government, but the complete fracture of civil society itself, creating, as they did in Iraq, Libya, and Syria, a failed state that can never project power or challenge Western dominance in the region. The question is not whether this war is expanding or escalating. We can all see that. The question is why and for whom. To understand this war accurately, we have to resist the instinct to center it on individual personalities. Trump ordered the strikes. Netanyahu pushed for them for years. But reducing a war of this magnitude to the decisions of a few men is merely looking at the symptoms and not at the root source of the problem. I approach geopolitics from a structuralist perspective, meaning I look at the structural incentives and behavioral mechanics of a system rather than the stated goals of its players. And when you look at the structure of modern capitalism, resource extraction, weapons manufacturing, currency dominance, financial speculation, war is not an anomaly. It is a feature. War transfers public money to private contractors. It secures resource access. It eliminates rivals, and it disciplines nations that attempt economic independence. Whether it's the US strangling Venezuela to redirect its oil, or bombing Iranian refineries to collapse its energy sector, the logic is economic, even when the language is moral. Now, to understand the specific strategic context of this war, we want to go back to a book published in 1997, Zbigniew Brzezinski's The Grand Chessboard, American Primacy and Its Geostrategic Imperatives. Brzezinski was a Polish-American political scientist and national security advisor. His argument was straightforward and blunt. American global dominance depends entirely on controlling the Eurasian landmass. Europe, Russia, the Middle East, Central Asia, and China together hold the majority of the world's population, energy reserves, and economic output. Whoever dominates that geography dominates the world. His prescription for the United States: prevent any single nation or any coalition of nations from consolidating enough power in Eurasia to challenge American primacy. Keep rivals divided, keep allies dependent, and extend American military and economic reach across the board. He specifically discussed using NATO to keep Ukraine separated from Russia, written in 1997, nearly 3 decades before the war in Ukraine began. He discussed strategies for managing a rising China and the importance of controlling Middle Eastern energy to maintain the dollar's role as the world's reserve currency. This is not a conspiracy. This is a documented, published American grand strategy. And in 2009, the Brookings Institution, one of Washington's most influential policy think tanks, published a paper called Which Path to Persia? Options for a New American Strategy Towards Iran. The document lays out, in clinical detail, every available option for eliminating Iran as a strategic threat. Economic sanctions, covert regime change operations, funding internal ethnic insurgencies, using Israel as a forward strike force, and ultimately a full joint US-Israeli military campaign. We were watching that document executed in real time. It was written before Obama's first term. It survived Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, and Trump again. And while the president changes, the strategy doesn't. Okay, on to the Epstein Class. My core argument. Why do I call this the Epstein War? Because the Epstein files don't just reveal the crimes of one man. They reveal the operating logic of the people who actually run the world. What the files document is a network, informal but real, durable across decades, operating entirely outside democratic accountability. A loose coalition of the world's wealthiest and most powerful individuals who protect one another, leverage each other, enrich each other, and in documented cases, blackmail each other into compliance. Politicians, presidents, tech billionaires, defense executives, Saudi royalty, European aristocracy, and central bankers. The financial infrastructure behind Epstein alone is revealing. These are not fringe actors. These are commanding institutions of global finance, and they maintained their relationship with Epstein with full knowledge of what he was doing. Epstein ran what intelligence analysts call a honeypot operation, systematically luring powerful individuals into compromising situations, documenting everything, and collecting blackmail on an industrial scale. The evidence strongly indicates Epstein was an intelligence asset, operating at the intersection of the CIA and Mossad. His connections to Israeli political and security establishments were extensive. His closest known Israeli contact was former Prime Minister Ehud Barak, with whom he maintained a years-long, well-documented relationship. And Netanyahu himself has publicly acknowledged using intelligence material as political leverage against American leaders. He has bragged about using recordings related to the Monica Lewinsky affair as leverage over Bill Clinton, leverage that was exchanged for the release of Jonathan Pollard, an Israeli intelligence operative who had stolen classified U.S. nuclear data. That is not a conspiracy theory, it's documented history, which brings us to Donald Trump. Trump was Epstein's best friend for over a decade, present at his events, photographed with him repeatedly, and by any reasonable assessment, a man with significant exposure to whatever Epstein was collecting. There is every reason to believe Israel holds tremendous compromising material on Trump, and Trump's presidency has, in practice, functioned as the execution of Netanyahu's foreign policy wish list, with almost no friction, no negotiation, and no resistance. But I want to address something directly, because it really matters. Israel does not control the United States. This framing that is small, tiny foreign state is pulling the strings on the world's military and economic power fundamentally misread the relationship and conveniently lets the actual power structure off the hook. Yes, AIPAC spends a lot of money. Yes, pro-Israel donors are significant in American political fundraising, but the money AIPAC spends is a fraction of what defense contractors, oil majors, and financial institutions spend shaping American foreign policy. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, ExxonMobil, JP Morgan, these are the real architects of American grand strategy, and the senior leadership of those institutions is overwhelmingly white, male, and Christian. Israel is sustained by the United States because it serves the United States. Or more precisely, it controls the corporate and financial class that directs American policy. It keeps the Middle East destabilized in ways that keep Arab states obedient and compliant. It provides a live testing environment for weapon systems. It contributes surveillance technology, intelligence sharing, and regional military reach. And it functions as a forward operating base for Western elite interests in the most energy-rich region on Earth. As Joe Biden said openly and plainly,
"It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel."
Israel is a proxy of the U.S., just like Ukraine is a proxy designed to overextend Russia, and just like Taiwan is a proxy positioned to contain China. These are instruments of a strategy that was designed long before any of the current leaders were in office. Trump is himself, in a meaningful sense, a proxy, the ideal public face of an overt imperial moment in American history. Aggressive, unapologetic, a perfect lightning rod that draws all the criticism toward himself and away from the structural forces operating behind him.
I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it.
And those forces were deliberate about building the current moment. And if you've been paying attention, they really have not been hiding it. Elon Musk, the world's wealthiest individual, donated $250 million to Trump's 2024 campaign, while his companies hold billions in U.S. government contracts. He now holds an unprecedented role influencing federal spending and institutional restructuring. Peter Thiel, co-founder of Palantir, a surveillance and predictive analytics company embedded throughout U.S. intelligence and military infrastructure, was a direct political mentor to J.D. Vance and a key early architect of the MAGA coalition's intellectual foundations. He has openly advocated for the use of AI and mass data collection as tools of political and social control. Project 2025, the governing blueprint now being implemented across the federal government, was drafted before Trump's election by a network of corporate-backed ideologues. Its goals: centralize power in the presidency, gut regulations for the environment, workers and consumers, dismantle social safety nets, and remove any roadblocks that democratic governance creates for concentrated wealth. If anything, the Epstein files show us that class solidarity is real among the ultra-wealthy. This is a class of people consolidating power through a carefully chosen vessel, Donald Trump. So the Epstein class has his president, and his president has their war. Now, why is Iran so important? Why now? Why this level of commitment? Well, all you have to do is follow the energy. China is the world's largest importer of crude oil. Its three largest suppliers have been Russia, Venezuela, and Iran. The United States is currently waging active campaigns against all three, either directly or indirectly through proxies, fighting Russia through Ukraine, and using sanctions meant to cut it off from European energy markets. Venezuela was also subjected to crushing sanctions, regime change, and the forced rerouting of its oil exports away from China and towards the U.S. and Israel. And Iran, now under direct military assault, with its refinery infrastructure being systematically destroyed and the U.S. attempting to take control of Kharj Island, where 90% of Iran's exports are handled. This is a coordinated energy war against China being fought on three fronts simultaneously. Here is why the Strait of Hormuz matters so much in this context. China receives approximately 90% of its oil imports by sea, and a significant portion of that passes through the strait. Iran's ability to control that passage, allowing Chinese and Russian ships through while denying transit to others, is a weapon of tremendous economic advantage. The petrodollar system, the arrangement by which global oil trade is conducted in US dollars, giving Washington enormous leverage over the global financial system, is already under pressure. The BRICS nations have been actively developing alternative payment systems and reserve currencies. The dominance of the dollar is no longer guaranteed. If China can control its energy supply chains independently of the United States, the petrodollar is in a lot of trouble. That will be an existential threat to American financial hegemony, and it explains the intensity of the U.S. campaign to breaking Iran. This war is, at its deepest level, a war that determines what kind of global order comes next. The U.S. is fighting to preserve a unipolar world, one where it controls energy markets, currency systems, and military dominance across every major region. Iran, Russia, China, and the broader global south are fighting for a multipolar world, where no single nation can impose its will on others. And the longer Iran holds, the more credible that alternative looks. This war is costing U.S. taxpayers approximately $11,000 a second, $1 billion a day, roughly $365 billion a year. With that money, the U.S. could provide healthcare coverage to all 50 million uninsured Americans, the entire uninsured population of the country, cover all college tuition in the United States, build 1.5 million housing units to address homelessness, and provide food assistance to 150 million Americans, nearly half the population. Instead, average Americans are watching their healthcare costs rise, their wages stagnate, while the American government spends $1 billion a day on a war that literally nobody wanted, and it does not serve the interests of the American public. And while that war is being waged, Trump spent $200 million of public money constructing a ballroom to host his billionaire associates. I'll let you decide what you want to call it. I'm going to call it the Epstein Memorial Ballroom. Now consider this. The U.S. military conducted an airstrike on the very first day of the war on a girls' school, killing 170 schoolgirls ages 8 to 12. That age group is not incidental. That is the exact demographic that Epstein and his network systematically targeted. So the Epstein class violates children in private while their military kills children in public. These are not two separate phenomena. They are the same pathology, the treatment of the most vulnerable human beings as disposable, expressed in different arenas. This is the Epstein army. This is what the Epstein regime looks like at scale. Now, I'm going to be direct about one more thing. I do have real criticisms of the Islamic Republic of Iran, its human rights records, its treatment of political dissidents, as well as its repression of women's rights. These are issues that require serious engagement. But that is not a conversation for this moment. Right now, what Iran represents on a geopolitical level is resistance to U.S. hegemony and a unipolar order. Iran's survival in this war matters way beyond Iran. It's not only a historic moment for indigenous peoples' resistance movements, it also matters for every nation in the global south attempting to chart its own course. It matters for a viability of the multipolar world, and it matters to anyone who believes that the alternative to U.S. hegemony is worth fighting for. Iran is seeking to remove the American empire's presence in the Middle East, force Arab nations to cooperate with Iran, and isolate Israel or risk economic calamity, and ultimately help in shifting the global currency from petrodollar domination to a shared trade currency system such as the BRICS model. The Epstein files reveal the depraved lifestyles of the powerful. The grand chessboard gave us the empire's strategy. The war in Iran is both of these things combined. It is fair to say that Iran is the one country leading the charge against the Epstein class, and its victory is a victory against imperial capitalism.
We are dealing with the Epstein class. They are bombing and killing little Iranian girls and raping little American girls.
The real question is not who is in charge of the machine. The real question is, what do we do about the war machine itself? And that is a subject for another video. This is the question the world needs to explore. Not just the war, but the system that produces it, and what a world genuinely beyond that system might look like. I'll be covering the military developments, the tactical procedures, and all the different nuances of the war in future videos. And if you have any analysis, insight, or perspective that I missed out on, or any questions that I didn't answer, please leave it in the comments below. Thanks for watching the video, guys, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.